I guess everyone knows of the heroics of Sergeant York, but to really get to know the man behind those medals, you might need to visit his childhood home. Here's Teresa Bush at the homestead of a hero.
It's the most famous residence in Fentress County. The two-story frame house is in the community of Pall Mall. From 1920 till his death in 1964, this was the home of the most decorated soldier of World War I, Sergeant Alvin C. York. His son Andy knows just how fond his father was of this corner of the world.
This valley, I mean, it's not like any other valley you go in hardly. I mean, he really loved it. He'd been in every state in the United States, spoke in every state, but there was nothing like this valley here.
He was the third of 11 children, born in 1887 in Pall Mall.
They had a real hard time. He worked every day for 40 and 50 cents a day. And of course, he worked on this farm where this house is built here now. And he lived about a half a mile north of here.
As a young man, York became skilled with guns.
They used to run pigeons out of the barn. He'd shoot them flying with a .22 rifle. And that's pretty good, and they were flying.
Little did York know that one day his keen shooting eye would help make him a household name. The story is best told in the 1941 movie, Sergeant York.
Come on! Come on! All right, come on out of there! All of you!
It was October 8, 1918, in the Argonne forest of France. York became the leader of a group whose mission was to destroy a nest of German machine gunners on a nearby hill. When it was all over, York and 7 others had captured 132 Germans, silenced 35 machine guns, and York had killed 25 of his enemies.
He didn't want anybody to look at him like, you know, that he was a hero or better than anybody else or anything. He never did.
York received dozens of medals for his bravery, including the Congressional Medal of Honor and France's Croix de Guerre. And even though York turned down a lot of endorsements that would have made him rich, he did accept something from the Nashville Rotary Club, a home and property.
When he came out of the Army, the house was already built. The bottom land was already purchased, and this is the same piece of bottom land he wanted.
A week after returning home, he married his sweetheart, Gracie Williams. They'd met earlier in church.
And a lot of people don't realize it, but when this house was built, it's wired for electricity. That's 1919.
Alvin and Gracie had 10 children. Their home became the centerpiece of a state historic area in 1995.
Now this was their little bedroom in here. This is where they always slept.
Much of the time, Margaret York is here to give guided tours. She was married to York's son, Thomas Jefferson.
It was a big house, all right. Of course, it needed to be because all the children and grandchildren that used to stay here. We had a lot of good food. We cooked a lot.
She knows this place well. She lived here for 17 years and helped care for her in-laws.
He had a stroke in 1954, so he was in bed 10 years.
But that looks like a hospital bed.
That his legs were paralyzed and he couldn't walk. And those are his hats, his coat, and their Bibles, and his wife's dress and hat she wore to his funeral. And she lived 20 years after he passed away. And this is the front entrance. This is where people used to come in.
Sure.
And up here's his certificates, the Congressional Medal of Honor, and the one wedding picture, and then the one from France.
York's library is also on the first floor. He'd be in here reading until the wee hours of the morning. And with such a large family, the dining room was always a very busy place. A lot of meals were served on this table. Now on it, you'll be able to see a Bible that's protected by glass. One verse is circled. It's the same one that's on York's monument.
You had family devotion every night before you went to bed.
4 bedrooms are upstairs, and like the first floor, each is fully furnished.
And I had no idea when we lived here that we'd be taking people through the home that we lived in.
Once you've seen the house, venture across the road to the York grist mill. The mill was built in the 1880s.
Daddy, he said he worked here in 1903, 4, and 5 or something.
Yeah.
Daddy bought the grist mill in 1943.
It was in operation until the early 1950s. Inside, you'll be able to see the machinery used to grind the corn. York didn't work here very much. His brothers ran the mill. York was on the road a lot. He was in great demand as a speaker.
We've got probably 200 speeches, and it's all about religion, agriculture, and a strong self-defense.
York seized the speaking opportunities to raise money to build a school in Jamestown, York Agricultural Institute. As you might expect, somebody as famous as Sergeant Alvin C. York was often asked, just how do you want to be remembered? Interestingly enough, his response did not include a word about the war. York said he wanted to be remembered for three things: improving education in Tennessee, bringing in good roads, and by just being good to his fellow man. York passed away on September 2, 1964, from complications of a stroke. Thousands of people from all across the country attended his funeral.
And this is the pallbearers. They done the whole funeral, had the color guard and all, and there was around 500 of them came up here.
York is buried in his beloved valley, a short distance from his home. From the graveyard, you can see the hills where he used to hunt, and the cliffs called the Yellow Doors, where he went to pray before going to war and upon his safe return.